Hello everybody. Welcome back to Learner Attraction. In our previous lesson, we focused on statements in indirect speech. Now let's take a look at how to convert a direct question, command, exclamation, etc., to an indirect one. First let's look at indirect questions. When a direct question is turned into an indirect question, the following changes are necessary. The interrogative construction of the direct question is replaced by the statement construction in the indirect question. Question marks are therefore omitted in indirect questions. For example, "Are you sure your mother will come?" he asked. Becomes, "He asked if I was sure my mother would come." "Where does he live?" she asked. She asked where he lived. The secretary asked, "What's your occupation?" The secretary asked what my occupation was. He asked, "Did they all do the exercise correctly?" He asked if they had all done the exercise correctly. "Will you help me?" she asked. She asked whether I would help her. If the direct question begins with a question word such as who, what, where, etc., the question word is repeated in the indirect question. For example, "Where are you to get off, John?" he asked. Becomes, he asked John where he was to get off. "What's your name?" she asked. She asked what my name was. "What do you want?" he asked me. He asked me what I wanted. "Why do they go to Paris so often?" he asked. He asked why they went to Paris so often. If there is no question word, if, or whether, is placed after the reporting verb. "Is anyone there?" she asked. Becomes, she asked if anyone was there. "Has Mary spent all the money?" he asked. He asked if Mary had spent all the money. "Are you a primary school teacher or a nurse?" he asked me. He asked me whether I was a primary school teacher or a nurse. "Can Henry speak Chinese?" she asked. She asked whether Henry could speak Chinese. Tenses. Personal pronouns. Possessive pronouns. Possessive adjectives. Demonstrative pronouns. Demonstrative adjectives, come and go, and adverbs of time and place. Change as in statements. For example, "Did you see him yesterday?" she asked me. She asked me if I had seen him the day before. "Must I answer all the questions?" she asked. She asked if she must answer all the questions. "Who bought you this dictionary?" he asked. He asked who had bought me the dictionary. "Is this yours?" she asked. She asked whether it was mine. "Where is your father?" she asked. She asked where my father was. "What time will you come here, Jim?" she asked. She asked Jim what time he would go there. Say can be used to introduce direct questions, but not indirect questions, so if the reporting verb is say, it must be changed to ask, inquire, wonder, want to know, etc. For example, "She said, 'Do you want me to help you?' becomes, she asked if I wanted her to help me." Note that if you want to report a question where the person addressed is mentioned, you must use ask. "She said, 'John, when are you leaving?' becomes, she asked John when he was leaving." If you use inquire, want to know, etc., you must omit John. Indirect commands. When a direct command is turned into an indirect one, the following will be noticed. The reporting verb, say, changes to tell, ask, order, command, etc., and it must be followed immediately by the person addressed, and the to infinitive. For example, George said, "Get everything ready in 2 hours." Becomes, George ordered us to get everything ready in 2 hours. She said, "Do your homework, Tom." She told Tom to do his homework. In direct commands, the person addressed is often not mentioned, but in indirect commands, the person addressed must be included, so it is necessary to add a noun or pronoun. She said, "Go away." She told me, her, him, the children, etc. to go away. She said, "Please be quiet." She asked me, him, them, etc. to be quiet. An indirect negative command is expressed by a negative infinitive. For example, he said, "Don't tell her about it." Becomes, he asked me not to tell her about it. She said, "Don't move, boys." She told the boys not to move. He said, "Don't all answer at once." He told, or ordered them not to answer all at once. She said, "Don't go there alone after dark." She told me not to go there alone after dark. Personal pronouns. Possessive pronouns. Possessive adjectives. Demonstrative pronouns. Demonstrative adjectives, come and go, and adverbs of time and place, change as in statements. For example, he said, "Please come here again tomorrow." Becomes, he asked me to go there again the next day. She said, "Look at this picture." She told me to look at the picture. He said, "Give me your address," not hers. He told me to give him my address, not hers. He said, "Do call me as soon as you arrive." He asked me to call him as soon as I arrived. She said, "Close your book." She told me to close my book. Advise. Beg, invite, recommend, remind, urge, and warn are often useful in indirect commands, requests, or advice. For example, "Stop smoking," I said, or advised. Becomes, I advised him to stop smoking. "Go on, James, hit him," she said. She urged James to hit the other boy. "Don't go near the fire, boys," she said. She warned the boys not to go near the fire. He said, please give me another chance." He begged them to give him another chance. My mother said, "Remember to thank Mrs. Jones when you are saying goodbye." My mother reminded us to thank Mrs. Jones when we were saying goodbye. Notice that, advice can also be expressed by the conditional construction, "If I were you, I." And this would normally be expressed by, advise, in indirect speech. "If I were you, I'd leave the town at once," he said. Becomes, he advised me to leave the town at once. Other ways of expressing indirect commands. The be plus to infinitive construction with say or tell is a possible alternative to the object plus to infinitive construction. He said, "Don't open the door." Becomes, he said that I wasn't to open the door. Or, he told me that I wasn't to open the door. Or, he told me not to open the door. The be plus to infinitive construction is particularly useful in the following cases. When the command is introduced by a verb in the present tense. He says, "Meet me at the station." Becomes, he says that we are to meet him at the station. He tells us to meet him at the station. Would be possible, but much less likely. When the command is preceded by a clause, usually of time or conditional. He said, "If she leaves the house, follow her." Becomes, he said that if she left the house, I was to follow her. Or, he told me to follow her if she left the house. If you use the object, plus to infinitive construction, you must change the order of the sentence so as to put the command first. He said, when you go out, lock all the doors. Becomes. He said that when I went out, I was to lock all the doors. Or. He told me to lock all the doors when I went out. Say, or tell, with a should construction, can be used similarly, but normally indicates advice rather than command. He said, if you're not feeling well, don't go to work. Becomes. He said that if I wasn't feeling well, I shouldn't go to work. Or. He told me that if I wasn't feeling well, I shouldn't go to work. Or. He advised me not to go to work if I wasn't feeling well. In informal English, the say plus to infinitive construction can be used. For example, he said, get everything ready in an hour. Becomes, he said to get everything ready in an hour. Nova said, meet me at 5:30 p.m. Nova said to meet her at 5:30 p.m. He said, don't go there alone after dark. He said not to go there alone after dark. He said, don't move. He said not to move. Note that if you want to report a question expressing a suggestion, recommendation, invitation, or offer, you can use suggest, recommend, invite, offer, etc. She said to me, would you like to dance with me? Becomes. She invited or asked me to dance with her. Or. She asked me if I wanted to dance with her. She said to me, would you like to have dinner with us? She invited me to have dinner with them. She said, why don't you buy a new car? She suggested, or recommended, buying a new car. He said, shall we go out for dinner tonight? He suggested going out for dinner tonight. He said to them, shall I drive you to the airport? He offered to drive them to the airport. Note that the verbs, suggest and recommend, are followed by the gerund. Exclamations. Exclamations must become statements in indirect speech. Various constructions are possible. She said, thank you. Becomes, she thanked me, him, etc. He said, good morning. He greeted or wished me a good morning. She said, Merry Christmas. She wished me a Merry Christmas. He said, congratulations. He congratulated me. She said, liar. She called me a liar. He said, damn. He swore. He said, what a dreadful thing. He said that it was a dreadful thing. She said, how dreadful. She said that it was dreadful. He said, what a lovely garden. He remarked with admiration that it was such a lovely garden. Exclamations such as, ugh, oh, heavens, are usually expressed by he, she, etc. Gave an exclamation of disgust, surprise, etc., or, he, she, etc. exclaimed with disgust, surprise, etc. Yes and no. Yes and no are expressed in indirect speech by subject, plus appropriate auxiliary verb. He said, can you speak English? And I said, no, or, no, I can't. He asked me if I could speak English and I said that I couldn't. She said, do you know anybody in Jakarta? And I said, yes. Or, yes, I do. She asked me if I knew anybody in Jakarta and I said I did. He said, will you have time to do it? And I said, no. He asked me if I would have time to do it, and I said that I wouldn't. I asked her, are you Jim's mother? And she answered, yes. Or, yes, I am. I asked her if she was Jim's mother, and she answered that she was. Mixed types. He said, I don't know how to drive a car. Do you? Becomes. He said that he didn't know how to drive a car, and asked her if she did. He said, I have left my wallet at home. Can you lend me some money? He said that he had left his wallet at home, and asked me if I could lend him some money. He said, I am going to see a movie. Where are you going? He said he was going to see a movie, and wanted to know where I was going. She said, Ugh, it's a snake. Don't go near it, children. She exclaimed with disgust that it was a snake, and told the children not to go near it. She said, Oh dear. I've lost my keys again. She exclaimed in exasperation that she had lost her keys again. Say, tell, and ask. Say can be used with direct and indirect statements. With say it is not necessary to mention the person addressed, but if the person addressed is mentioned, to must be used. He said, I'm going to the movies. Becomes, he said he was going to the movies. I'm going to buy another car, he said to me. He said to me, or told me that he was going to buy another car. Note that say to is not much used with indirect statements, tell is often used instead of say to. Tell can also be used with direct and indirect statements, but its chief use is with indirect statements, and it must be followed by the person addressed. For example, he hasn't come, she told me. She told me that he hadn't come. Say can be used with direct questions, but it cannot be used with indirect questions. For example, he said, Where are you going? He asked me where I was going. In indirect commands, tell and ask are followed by object, plus to infinitive. Say cannot be used like this. He said, run quickly. Becomes. He told or asked me to run quickly. Not, he said me to run quickly. In indirect commands, say or tell can be used with the be plus to infinitive construction, or a should construction. He said, if I fall asleep at the wheel, wake me up. Becomes. He said that, or told me that if he fell asleep at the wheel, I was to wake him up. He said, if you want to be healthy, stop smoking. He said that, or told me that if I wanted to be healthy, I should stop smoking. This construction normally indicates advice rather than command. Ask can be used with direct and indirect questions. Did you see Tom yesterday? He asked. He asked me if I had seen Tom the day before. When an apology in direct speech is turned into an indirect speech, you can use apologize. For example, he said to my mother, I'm sorry I'm late. Becomes. He apologized to my mother for being late. Or you can just say, he told my mother that he was sorry for being late. She said to us, sorry for the delay and any inconvenience caused. She apologized to us for the delay and any inconvenience caused. When a request for something in direct speech is turned into an indirect speech, you can use, ask for. For example, he said, can I have another piece of cake? He asked for another piece of cake. Now, do this exercise. Directions, for each question, there are 4 choices, and only one of them is correct. Write down the correct answers on a piece of paper. You have 2 minutes to complete this exercise. Check your answer. Question 1. D. He lived. Where does he live? She asked. She asked where he lived. Question 2. A. Told. She said, don't move boys. She told the boys not to move. Question 3. A. Asked. He said, where are you going? He asked where I was going. Question 4. D. Asked. She said, please be quiet. She asked me to be quiet. Question 5. C. Told. He hasn't come, she told me. Question 6. B. Told me not to. He said, don't open the door. He told me not to open the door. Question 7. C. Was. I asked her if she was Jim's mother and she answered that she was. Question 8. A. Are to meet. He says, meet me at the station. He says that we are to meet him at the station. Question 9. C. Begged. He said, please give me another chance. He begged them to give him another chance. Question 10. A. Invited. She said to me, would you like to dance with me? She invited me to dance with her. Well, that's the end of this lesson. Thanks for watching. If you like this video lesson, please give it a thumbs up, share it, and subscribe to our channel.